Tired of OP13? Play Buggy. Hello and welcome to the table, and today I'm back with another One Piece deck tech video. This time talking about, right now, my favorite deck to play in all of One Piece. One that many of you, if not all of you, have forgotten. The Genius Jester, Buggy the Clown. Buggy D Clown. And man, this deck is so fun. And it's not as relevant as it used to be, but it's a lot better than you might think. I was just recently playing in a casual tournament with Buggy, and I went 3-1 with him. Could have gone 4-0. And I played against, some Yellow Bonnies, I played against some Namis. I mean, I didn't play against decks that were the top of the meta, like Zoro, but they weren't easy decks to play against either. So Buggy, just hear me out. So this 5k, 5 life mono blue leader has an activate main. You can activate it multiple times in a turn. That allows you to rest 5 of your Dawn and trash a card from your hand to play 1 cross guild type character from your hand. So you have 2 10 cost cross guild type characters. And you want to play them both. Well, normally you couldn't, but in Buggy, at the simple cost of trashing 2 cards from your hand, you can play both of them. Now, granted, that is kind of a big setback, but we're blue. So cards aren't really our issue. So Buggy here, he's just wanting to do some stupid shenaniganry and put out some massive monsters that you just aren't gonna see in a lot of other decks. So let's check out Buggy. We got some Dawn, we got some pretty looking Dawn cards here. And let's talk about the first portion of the deck, which is the Searchers. We got 8 of them. We got Cross Guild, a 1 cost event. Has a main effect to look at the top 4 of your deck, reveal it to 1 Cross Guild type card, and add it to your hand. Can be this card. That's pretty sweet. And you place the rest at the bottom of your deck in any order. And it has a trigger to activate its main effect. So, generally, this deck does want to go second. I've heard some people that don't really understand why that is. I'll explain that in a second for those of you that don't understand why this deck wants to go second. But so you can play this, get another one of these if you miss and don't get something you want, and then play it again. And then, hopefully find the thing you're wanting to look for. So playing 2 Searchers on the first turn, getting that much little peekiness at your deck, I mean, that ain't bad. But besides Cross Guild, we also got Mr. 3 Galdino, which is another Searcher, another 1-cost Searcher. This time, it counters for 1, and it's a 2k body. But it doesn't have a trigger. But on play, of course, you get to look at the top 4, reveal a Cross Guild type card, or a card with the type including Baroque works other than this card. Add it to your hand, then place the rest of the bottom of your deck in any order. So, basically get anything from your deck you want, besides another copy of this. That's sweet. Because, Searchers, they're good. We love them. But turn 2 is also a really important part of this deck. On the first turn, you want to make sure that you go second in a vast majority of games, especially against some of the more meta decks. If you do play against them like Ace, like Emu, I hope you just want to pray that you don't play against those decks. But if you do, you especially want to go second. But this deck wants to go second because on your first turn you play 2 Searchers. Then on turn 2, the next big portion of the deck, you want to play out your 4 costs, or technically 5 costs. So these cards are really sweet because a main game plan of the deck is getting a bunch of 5 cost or higher characters out on the board to take full advantage of a card we'll get to near the ender portion of the video. And these cards are kind of the early versions of those 5 quote-unquote drops that you will be playing. Such as this 4-cost Alvida, a 4-cost 5k, 1k counter body, that if you have 2 or more characters with a cost of 5 or more, it gets +1 cost. So it doesn't cost any more to play, but while it's on the board, it costs 5 resources, which again will matter for reasons I'll explain later if you don't already know where I'm going there. But on top of being a 5k body for 4, which ain't horrible, you also get the on play of, since your leader is Buggy, drawing 3 and trashing 2 from your hand. So you get a lot of filtering with this card. I mean, you get to look at 3 new cards, get rid of the 2 worst cards from your hand. That ain't bad by any means whatsoever. So we love Alvida, and we also love 2 different 2K blockers in this deck, Kabaji and Moji, which we have 4 copies of each of these. So Kabaji here is a 4-cost 2K 1K power character that if you have 2 or more characters with a base cost of 5 or more, it gets blocker and +1 cost. That's sweet. It becomes a 5-cost, quote-unquote, and it gets blocker, which is especially nice because during your opponent's turn, it gets an additional 5K power bump. So it's a 6K blocker for 4 resources that counters for 2. This card is fair and balanced. I absolutely love this card. It sucks that a lot of the 2Ks in this deck you actually do kind of want to play, which is why this deck runs a few more than the average deck. It's runs 16 instead of the normal, like, kind of 12-ish. But I think it's great because you get to play cards like Kabaji, and you get to play cards like Moji, which is very similar. It's also a 4-cost 1K, 2K counter body that can get blocker and +1 cost, depending on how many 5 costs you have on the board, too. And instead of having plus 5K power on your opponent's turn, it gets a pretty sweet on KO. Of when you get, kind of to a lower amount of cards in hand, kind of near the late-ish portions of the game, you need a few more cards. If you have 3 or less cards, you can draw a card. So, I mean, very often in the later portions of the game, I just want to drop 1 or 2 of these to make sure that I can keep my life healthy enough and my board strong enough to where I can finish out the opponent. And I probably won't have too many cards to help me with that. So this can be a nice way to block my opponent and get a card. Which, for a 2K body, on top of all that, I don't think is very bad. So, maybe that's just me. But then, the next kind of portion of the deck, I mean, this next card here is a 4-cost. You can play it on the second turn, but it is a turn 2 play, but it kind of leans more towards the next portion of the deck, which is the swarm aspect of the deck. A lot of what this deck is wanting to do is do stuff like Buggy's effect. Play big boys earlier than it's supposed to, and play a bunch of them as often as you can, and just do dumb, play a million big dude kind of things, kind of plays. And one of those is playing this 2 of Buggy from ST25. It's a 4-cost 1K counter body that has an activate main, trashing a card from your hand, and this character. If your leader is Buggy, you can play any cross-scale type character with a cost of 6 or less from your hand. So you're basically getting to play one of your 6 costs a turn earlier, which is absolutely incredible. Because, yeah, sure, if you, have the odd curve and you are playing, you get to 5 Dawn, you play 6 cost, you're getting, 1 Dawn cost deduction. That's cool, that's fine, whatever. But this deck isn't aggressive. You want to go slow. You want to play 2 Searchers on turn 1. You want to play a 4-cost on turn 2. If one of those happens to be this Buggy, then a turn early, might I add, to make sure that you're a little healthier against those aggressive decks, you can play a Dracula Mihawk, one of 4 in the deck, this one being the prettiest. You do not have to play this in your version, obviously, but this is a pretty inexpensive alt art, in my opinion. It's like $5, so if you do ever want to alt out your Buggy deck, this is one of the cards I would pick up first. I absolutely love this card. But it's a 6-cost 7K blocker that on play draws 2, trashes 1. So it replaces itself. And gets you a little bit of hand filtering, and is a blocker, and is a 7K body. Sure, it doesn't counter for anything, but all things considered, you do the whole Buggy thing right here. You get rid of 2 cards from your hand between this card and the card that you're trashing from your hand. You get this Mihawk, so you're effectively only going down 1 card, and you develop a 7K body that, if you need to, also blocks. I mean, that is not weak by any means. But then as an alternative, if you don't have a 6-cost to play with the Buggy, that's not this Mihawk, there is a backup that's also a 2K in this Buggy 2K counter. I also have 4 copies of this. It's just a 6K 6 cost, 7k, vanilla 2k body. This card, you know, it's nothing really insane or special at all, but, you know, I mean, the fact that it's still a big threat to play off of, like, that 4 cost buggy, like, on your kind of worse hands, just having a 7k body on turn 2 to develop still isn't bad. It can allow you to develop some decent aggression and have some tool to help you manage the opponent's board state, which is why there are 4 copies of this in the deck. Also, there's another card that really combos nice with this, and just any buggy in the deck in general, but this having another buggy in the deck also helps with the consistency aspect of that card. I'll get to that later, but yeah, this buggy, 2k, is really useful, is what I'm trying to say here. But speaking of buggies, here's another buggy, a 7 cost promo buggy. This one doesn't count for anything, and it doesn't have the ability to attack either, so that's not very good, but it's a 7 cost AK, unattackability, whatever, character that if your leader is buggy, all characters, not just yours, not just your opponents, but you and your opponent's characters with a cost of 3 or 4 cannot attack. So that seems like a really big downside, because remember earlier, all these 4 costs, they're 5 costs if you have 2 or more things with a cost of 5 or more. So they are 5 costs, so this buggy doesn't shut down their ability to be able to attack. So that Alvida, that 5k attacking Alvida, can still attack. That's nice. And if your opponent has stuff like, you're playing against Nami, like I did the other night, they play a Kiku Nojo, or they trigger a Kiku Nojo off of life. Can't attack, thanks to this buggy. That's sweet. And on top of making it harder for your opponent to attack into you or your board, it also has an on-play of saying play up to 1 cross-skill type character card with a cost of 6 or less from your hand. Oh, well, I got a couple of 6 costs in the deck. I got this buggy, and I got this Mihawk. That's another reason why I have this buggy as a backup. If you don't have, you know, the Mihawk that you prefer to play off the buggy, or that buggy, then you have this buggy. Yeah, I get it. There's a lot of buggies. It's buggy. It's the buggy deck. So, what are you gonna do? But then, besides that, there's also more ways to swarm, because of course there are. Now, those 4 costs that I've mentioned are very important parts of the deck. Alvida, Kabaji, and Moji. Those are all very, very crucial cards in the deck. And you want to have them out. Because, you know, more bodies on the board is always better. Especially when you get to the 10 cost in the deck. But this Croc-Hawk here, this Crocodile and Mihawk, makes that especially nice. And easy to get those bodies out, because this 8 costs 7k, which is not a great rate, no K counter body, has a lot of good things going for it. Because on play you get to draw 2, trash 1 from your hand, then play up to 1 cross-skill type character card with a cost of 4 or less from your hand, like that Alvida, Kabaji, Moji, or really if you have to, that 4 cost buggy that you can then cycle away into maybe a 6 cost Mihawk blocker or something along those lines. That's sweet. But on top of getting to play one of those 4 costs from your hand, it also, you know, it does the filtering thing, but it also has a once per turn effect that if a cross-skilled type character card character would be removed from field by your opponent's effect, you can just trash a card from your hand. So if your opponent has, I mean, I get that removal isn't super popular right now, but let's say for some reason you're playing against a black deck and they have Finger Pistol in it, and they play it on one of your stuff. You can just trash one of the cards from your hand that doesn't count for anything, and then boom! Sweet! It's awesome. The thing that you, like, one of your more important cards, like, let's say this Buggy promo is the only thing allowing you to win the game because you're playing against a more aggressive deck. They have a ton of 3 and 4 cost characters, and they want to get rid of this. They cannot get rid of it, basically, until they get through this, or that once per turn effect, essentially. They have to have 2 ways to remove Buggy. But so yeah, essentially, this Crocodile and Mihawk, it's a really, really dumb card. It's the whole point of that rant there. But then other ways to swarm, because of course, we need more ways to swarm. Come on, what were you expecting? Now, this combo isn't really as powerful in the deck, but it is still really important to know, and I still think it's very valuable to have in the deck because some people aren't a big fan of this Crocodile. This is a 7 cost, 7k, 1k counter body. The fact that it counts for 1 is really good in my opinion. That is one of the reasons that's in the deck. It's like, it's still a countering body, unlike the Crocodile Mihawk, the regular old Mihawk. Like, it can still counter if you need it to. But this Crocodile, besides being a 7k that can counter for 1, also has an on-play of playing up to one of your cross-guild type character cards, or a character with the type including Baroque Works, from your hand with a cost of 5 or less. Now sure, you can't play the, the Mihawk or the 2k Buggy in the deck, like you could with the promo Buggy, like you could with the starter deck Buggy. But, you could play those 4 costs that I mentioned earlier, or you could play this Cabbagey 2k. It's a 5 cost, 5k, 2k counter body, and another thing, you develop 2 5 costs with this, so that's also pretty valuable if you need. But on top of being a 5k, 2k counter body, it also has a pretty important line of text, saying if you have a Buggy or Moji character, which is another reason why I think that Buggy 2k is so good in the deck, if you have that Buggy character, and just having a lot of Buggy characters allows this character to be unable to be KO'd in battle. So sure, your opponent can still KO through effects, but KO effects aren't very popular right now. The only way to get rid of a lot of things is just through battle. This is pretty much always going to be impossible to get rid of in battle. So this card can actually just allow you to win the game in some matchups. Like if your opponent doesn't have certain cards in their deck to, get rid of this, this card could just win you the game, or at least allow you to get rid of a ton of cards from your opponent's hand and just make it that much easier for you to win the value game against your opponent, which will be very helpful, if not allow you to just flat out win the game. So yeah, this Cabbagey and Crocodile combo, I just think that Cabbagey is good in general, and like if you have to play it off of something like that Buggy promo or many of the other cards I talked about earlier, it's fine, it's a good card. But also off the Crocodile, I just think it's a solid card, because if you have to play this combo line, at least you're developing 2 5 cost or higher bodies to turn those 4 costs into 5 costs, quote unquote, that I talked about earlier, so that it can also be a lot easier for this Buggy to do what it's supposed to. The end game of the deck. This is how you win the game. With this Buggy, this 10 cost 12k power Buggy that does not counter, but it has a very, very powerful on-play of getting to place 1 character from your opponent's board on the bottom of their deck. Doesn't matter how much it costs. It can cost 10 resources. Puts it right on the bottom of their deck. So you got a 10 cost 12k body, and you got rid of your opponent's most important card. That's a really dumb rare. Well, where's the catch? Then, if you do not have 5 characters with a cost of 5 or more, you place this character at the bottom of the owner's deck. So you have to have 5 cost or higher characters on board in order for this card to work. So that sucks, but that's why we have every card in the deck pretty much, besides a couple of outliers like, that Galdino or the ST21 Buggy, 25 Buggy. Outside of those very few niche cards, everything in this deck can turn into a 5 cost. And as long as you go into your turn prior to playing this Buggy with 4 5 cost or higher characters, you can drop this for 5 resources off of your Buggy leader effect, and then boom, you get to do the thing. You get to bottom deck your opponent's most powerful card and develop a 12k body. And my favorite play line to do, because sometimes I don't like to play Buggy necessarily, like when I have the ability to, like when I have 8 Dawn, for example, I'd rather to develop my board a little bit more and do some stuff like play this Croc Hawk, so that then, when my opponent really starts to develop a powerful board to battle and combat against my board, I can play my favorite combo line in the deck, which is trashing 2 cards from my hand, resting all 10 of my Dawn. Instead of just being able to play 1 of these Buggies, I get to play 2 of them. I get rid of my opponent's 2 most powerful cards, probably which were the cards that they were relying on to win the game, and now all of a sudden I have 2 12k bodies, they have a lot smaller board, and I am very likely to win the game. That is how I won every single one of my games last night in that tournament that I was in. So Yeah. It's not a weak playline, let's go with that. So this is just what you want to do with the deck. You want to save your time. You want to filter through your deck. Make sure you get 2 of these so that on that 10 Dawn turn, you can play 2 of these buggies, get rid of your opponent's most important parts of the board, most important pieces of the board. Just develop a bunch of really solid bodies, some blockers to just build a wall around your board and around your life. And, you know, a couple of 7k bodies here and there to allow you to have some aggression outside of just these buggies when you drop them. And then just win the game because your opponent will have no value left. They'll have nothing left to stop you and your takeover of the world. Just like Buggy was born to do. Because he just keeps failing upwards. And at this point, I can just see him beating Emu in the end and becoming king of the world. I'm joking about 5% when I say that. Like, I can see it happening, but like, that might not be the end game. But yeah, anyways, besides that, that's the main game plan of the deck. Getting to that Buggy, that's the end game of the deck. But I do have some tech pieces, only 2, but they're both important. Pudding and Gravity Blade Raging Tiger. Now these are both only 1-ofs. I could argue for there being like 2 copies of each of these or something like that, something along those lines. But the way that I look at it, you filter through your deck so much, and with a lot of decks that have 5 life, including this one especially, you always, when your opponent swings into your life, you take the first life. You're probably pretty happy taking your second life, not even wasting any cards in your hand, having a lot of cards in your hand, having those 2 searchers early on in the game, searching into all the things that you need. But there's also a ton of cards that just say, draw so many cards, then discard a card. Draw so many cards, discard a card. You have a lot of ways to filter through your deck, and you are very likely to get to one of these cards if you need to, if you dig hard enough. But that's just my opinion. So there's only 1 copy of each of these. Now, both of these cards are very good for different reasons. This Pudding here is good against any deck that has a lot of cards in their hand, aka any blue mirror match ever. Like Ace, or even Emu. A ton of decks. Some of the more powerful decks in the game right now. Or just even some of the more annoying decks for this deck to beat in the game right now. Always have 5 or more cards in their hand. And this card is really good against that. Because this 4-cost 4k, 1k counter body says on play, your opponent returns all cards from their hand to their deck and shuffles their deck. Then they draw 5 cards. So if your opponent has 7 cards in their hand, and they had searched maybe once, maybe twice, and they took a life, like, they're very happy with what they got in their hand right now. This Pudding here, 1, makes them lose 2 cards, which is already great in and of itself, and they're very likely gonna wind up with far less cards that they like than they did before, which just makes it a lot easier for you to take the tempo if you didn't already have it, and then just close out the game. Just shut the door on your opponent's chances of winning the game. So this Pudding, basically, if your opponent has gets a little bit too greedy with what they got in their hand, just Pudding them. I mean, that's Blue's like main thing. It's like, hey, if you get a little bit too greedy, I'm just gotta drop this Pudding on you. I hope you enjoy that. But then there's also this Gravity Blade Raging Tiger. Now this card I actually think is incredibly useful in this deck. 1, because Marco exists. 2, because, you know, I could run Red Rock, which is a powerful card. But we have the Buggy, the 10-cost Buggy, which that card bottom decks a card. 1 card. But this Gravity Blade bottom decks 2 cards, because this 7-cost event has a main to place 2 characters with the cost of 6 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck, in any order. And it triggers to place a character with a cost of 5 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. So basically, the reason that this card is in the deck is if your opponent develops 2 bodies, and you don't have 2 buggies to deal with both of those, you have just 1 buggy. Well, you need to get rid of both of those. Like, if they're both blockers, and you can't win the game on your next turn, and you have to get rid of those blockers in order to win the game, the only way that you could win the game is with an effect like this Gravity Blade. Having, like, that last get-out-of-jail-free card, when you do not have 2 buggies anymore to double bottom deck your opponent's characters in the same turn, you need something like this Gravity Blade, and that is why it's a 1-of in the deck. And on top of that, it has a really good trigger. If your opponent has a really important 5 cost or lower character that they have developed on the board early on, like let's say it's turn 2 or something for your opponent, and they just played a 4 cost Marco, and they swan into your life, and it's like, oh, okay, I'll take a life. And you trigger this, and you get rid of that Marco. All of a sudden, they just wasted their second turn, basically. And you just gained so much tempo. So yeah, this Gravity Blade Raging Tiger, it's a really good card. But that's Buggy. I love this deck. I think it is one of the most fun decks to play in One Piece, period and a sentence. But also, when you're playing against a lot of off-meta decks, because at a lot of TC, or at a lot of LGSs where I've played One Piece before, and even if not, with a lot of people that have just gone to individually, just like hang out in groups with people, just to play casual nights. There's a lot of people that are just so fed up with OP13 that they just want to play casual off-meta decks. And Buggy, one, is a deck that people don't want to expect, or don't expect, and it actually can perform really well and can allow you to get some decent wins and a lot of wins, so that could be really good for you, because who doesn't want more packs? But on top of that, it's also, in my opinion, just one of the most fun decks to play in this game. I mean, I love purple for the fact that it can just big boy, big boy, big boy, big boy, big boy. And this is similar to purple, but also a bit different. It's a little bit different than the normal kind of deck that I play in this game, but it's similar enough to where I can still really enjoy it, and it's just so fun. So if you want to play something, you're tired of OP13, you want to play something that you haven't played before, just give Buggy a try. It's $12. It's not that big of an investment. And I would be willing to bet you come out of your next night playing One Piece a little bit surprised. So with all that aside, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It's completely free. You won't regret it. And have a great rest of your day, everybody. And good luck, Buggy, at taking over the world, because the way that things are going, I could see it happening. See you next time.